Welcome to Monday. It's August 9th, 2021. Well, on today's podcast, not much going on, really. The monsoon is gone for a while, and we're looking at dry conditions, cooler conditions in some areas, though, today. There's a pretty healthy trough going across Montana and Alberta and Saskatchewan, and that's going to send some cooler air into some parts of the northern high plains and Rockies. Unfortunately, folks, the smoke and haze will be with us all week. It's mainly the Northern California fires, namely that Dixie fire and other fires in the Northern California area. The upper level winds are just lined up perfectly to bring that smoke our way. And we really don't see much change all week. So I'm afraid to say our smoky, hazy conditions will remain. Rain chances are low until late in the week and the weekend when some moisture in the desert southwest does work its way back north towards us. The Pacific heat content is dropping. La Nina is charging back to life. Have some data points to show you that this La Nina, folks, is coming right back to life as we look ahead into the fall and early winter season. Today's satellite image shows what I'm showing you is the water vapor. The red and the orange and the darker brown colors and light orange and yellow represents the driest air, the gray, the blue, where there's deeper moisture in the atmosphere. You can see a beautiful swirl. Look at that counterclockwise spin around this low that's going through north central Montana right now. Notice that that is drawing in the upper level winds and the smoke right along with it from the Dixie fire there. But up here, cooler temperatures and showers and thunderstorms will be riding on through. It's going to kind of come up and then down, and will bring more showers and thunderstorms to the Corn Belt. But notice all the orange and the red. So we're just not going to see much in the way of any shower or thunderstorm activity. Here's our next moisture plume gathering steam over Old Mexico and southern Arizona and southwest New Mexico. This will eventually come on up later in the week, and that's when thunderstorms will come back. Speaking of the smoke, this is the smoke plume forecast for 3 o'clock this afternoon. You can see the deepest smoke is up here. And then as we go forward into tomorrow, rather late tomorrow and into the morning hours of Wednesday, it gets pushed east. It gets thinned out a little bit, but you can see that there's really no significant help with Mother Nature to get those fires down. So there's going to continue to just be that smoke plume coming from the Dixie fire and other fires in Northern California. Here's today's upper level map showing that low very nicely, as you saw in the satellite imagery across Montana and the Dakotas. This is going to usher in some cool air. And look at these temperatures relative to average this afternoon. Look at all the blue and the green there across northern Wyoming, Idaho, the western Dakotas, parts of Alberta and Saskatchewan. Also notice there's cold up here in the northern latitudes here. It is really cooling off up there, and that's something that'll be playing a role here in probably 5 or 6 weeks from now. But in the short term, as we look ahead, it's interesting to note where the coolness is behind this trough, and this cooler air will slide in. If you were to take a look at the water vapor forecast, this is for Tuesday afternoon, and you can see a very large patch of dry air through the central and northern Rockies here. Here's that moisture building up over the southwest United States again, and then moisture up in the northern areas. But we're kind of sandwiched between the wet areas to the north and to our south where that water vapor is more rich. By Friday, though, notice we start to see some green back into Colorado, Wyoming, back into here. Now, this is nothing like the moisture plume we had in July, but it is going to bring an uptick in showers and thunderstorms for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Until then, most of you are looking at a mostly dry forecast. If you were to look at the weekend outlook, you can see that high pressure is rebuilding over Utah. Not terribly strong high pressure, but kind of the run-of-the-mill mid-August type of condition. Tropical activity starting to heat up in the Pacific, and we're going to see other activity developing out here later on. So in about 5 to 10 days, you're going to be hearing more about the tropics beginning to heat up with tropical storm and potential hurricane activity later. This is 10 days from now. And you notice a generally flat jet stream going across North America. No big highs, no big lows, very much run-of-the-mill, typical middle August conditions. Notice this blue up here, and notice the colors are getting a cooler look to it. So we're starting to build up that colder air in the northern latitudes. Nothing to be frightened about. It's just that time of year. It's really hard to imagine in early August you start thinking about and watching those northern latitudes. But with these longer nights and shorter days, it does add up and makes a difference in how the weather patterns behave. I want to talk briefly about the heat ocean content and the way that we measure and kind of track where we're going to go with either a La Nina or an El Nino. The blue here represents where the heat content between 100 degrees west and 180 degrees west longitude in that equatorial region of the Pacific that we watch so closely. Notice you can see here the very robust La Nina that we had going back into the spring of 2020. And then as we got to late spring and during the early summer period, the La Nina faded. That's where it faded and actually technically went away. But look is what has happened since literally early July. Look at that dropping. So you're almost where we were in this fall. So La Nina is coming back. It did not completely go away, and it's not going to go away. And if you start to measure this recent La Nina, it is the strongest since that 2010, 2011 La Nina. Then we got to go back to the late 90s and early 2000s. And, drought in the western United States. It lines up perfectly. So this is certainly a situation to where this is going to be a full, almost complete 2-year La Nina. And if you were to look at the monthly PDO, now you say, what is the monthly PDO? We're going to have to make a video on this. This is the Pacific Decadal Oscillation. Basically, this is a long-term cycle of different changes in ocean temperature across the entire Pacific Basin. Very interesting story how it was discovered, and we'll talk about that in a future video. But what's really interesting is if you were to look, these are, when we talk about values of PDOs, when you see a negative value, that's when the Pacific Basin is generally colder. This is when it's generally warmer. Generally warmer Pacific gives you more El Ninos. A generally colder Pacific gives you more La Ninas and stronger ones. And if you were just matching it up, and if you were to wonder about the extreme weather this past year, the drought conditions in the West, and if you go back to where this has happened before and you look at the strength of this colder phase, well, we're certainly in a colder phase with the Pacific Decadal Oscillation. And that sometimes matches up with other oscillations that happen with water temperatures in the Atlantic. And we'll talk about that in a future video. But the point here is to show you that with the Pacific Basin definitely getting colder over the last 2 years, there should be no shock, there should be no surprise that the central and western United States is in a severe drought period. The good news is that yes, even though La Nina is coming back for fall and early winter, for the rest of 2021 into early 2022, historically, we bounce back into some form of El Nino by next spring and next summer. So one of these situations to where it's going to get worse before it gets better is kind of the best way to describe it. Have yourself a good Monday. We'll talk to you tomorrow.